was the first time we watched it, we were like, ooh, cringe, ooh, cringe. And then the second time we watched it, I was like, whoa.
What?
Right? Our culture has become so like, oh, you can think this is good and I can think that's bad, but we can just coexist together and not actually talk about it. But I think that part of what we're confronting is that, no, we need to talk about it. There is a real good and there is a real bad. And if we can't contend with that, then we're just going to be split off into different groups of lies. If we keep telling people, you're just a good person, you're beautiful, you're perfect, then they're going to think they have to think that way, and then they're going to do anything to think that way, including lying to themselves. You can't be honest with yourself about who you are. You're not going to be honest with anybody else, and then nobody knows you. Then all of a sudden, you're completely isolated and alone, and you made it that way. Recently, a friend told us about Kpop Demon Hunters, and initially, I had no idea, because what TikTok, I was like, Kpop Demon Hunters? Like, what is this about?
Yeah.
And then our mom was like, oh, everybody's talking about this. And we're like, oh no, that's a bad sign. and we kind of immediately wrote it off in terms of just seeing the cover and the title. We're like, what the heck is this?
Yeah.
And
but the reason why we finally bit the bullet, or whatever saying applies, was because my dad's friend, a grown man with a big beard, recommended to us and said that it was a great movie. And you know, the cover did not seem, so we're thinking, okay, there must be something in here that we're not seeing. Okay.
Well, and also we heard like it's like the most watched in the first like few months of premiering or something, and the history of Netflix, and we're like, okay, this is we let's see what's going on here. So we watched it for the first time, and we had to like push ourselves to get through the first like 5-10 minutes.
Yeah.
Because we were so like, oh my god, this is so cringy and so like
Demon Huntery,
generic, and
like exactly what you would expect.
Yeah, but then
like,
but we pushed through, and then at the end you were like, hey, I was like impressed. This was a good movie. It was enjoyable.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, this is enjoyable. We recorded podcasts, but I was like, it's enjoyable, and they had good intentions, but I don't really see like a cohesive meaning until we watched it for the second time and with our dad.
We got to redo the podcast.
Yeah, we're like, okay, well, we need to redo our podcast.
We had a podcast that we'd recorded about it.
And we were like, this is good. It's a good podcast.
It was locked and loaded. I did all the editing.
I'm sorry.
And then we're like, we got to record this. Yeah. We record this because, okay, one thing about Kpop Demon Hunters is like why it's like such a well-watched movie was because it's just like the animations and everything makes it like a really addictive movie.
Right,
like,
yeah.
It's like there's a video of this guy who's like running in different costumes, and like he's running in like, you know, person getting abducted by aliens. There's a chicken costume, and I don't know what it is about that video, but it's so addictive to watch it
over and over again. Yeah,
and I felt kind of like the same way about the movie, so I was like, okay, we got to rewatch it, especially because our dad hadn't watched it. So we're like, okay, let's watch it with our dad. And so maybe you should give your takeaways first, like immediate impressions for the second rewatch.
Okay, well, I'll give my immediate impressions for the first watch was, so we're going to kind of be referencing the movie, so spoiler alerts, I guess, was that I felt like this is an interesting plot, but I don't really understand what the demon is supposed to symbolize. And we were thinking, oh, is it just supposed to be like negative thoughts? And that just seems like a bit of a flawed sort of like premise. Yeah, because this is what the bad guy is.
They're also like fighting demon dudes. Right. But then there's the big fire demon that's like talking in your head.
Right. And then there's like, some demons that are like all like ugly, and then there's the boy band ones that are like look different than the other ones.
Yeah. And then everyone in the boy band except the main Jinu character goes back to being like just an evil demon dude. Yeah. So it was confusing there as like what actually is a demon.
But I also think that's part of the appeal of the movie, is that there is a deeper message that I do think is very important and that we appreciate, that, but it's something that's like kind of like imbued in the story in a way that's very subtle, in a way that given because of the music, like every time we go to H Mart, it's just the soundtrack of Kpop Demon Hunters playing.
Okay, and the music is also very addictive to listen to.
The music is great, and then then also
like My Little
yeah.
Like I hated the song.
I know when we first
I can't stop listening to it.
We first listened to it and we're like, oh my goodness. God. And it's the same reason why we have generally not been fans of K-pop itself, like the genre of music, as we're just
it's very much like
there's no meaning at all, and then they just insert some random English word.
There's one song that's like mostly Korean, but then they would randomly add in look at me in the song, just like random English words.
And we're like, what's going on? So there is that part of it, but then I think that because people are listening to the music over and over again, and some of the songs, minus that song, it actually does have like, you know, a lot more in there in terms of meaning.
Okay, one thing I think actually the last couple of scenes, like the last 3 scenes in the movie, I found to be like most powerful, excluding like the one at the very end where they're just sitting in the hot tub like oh, this is so relaxing. Right. Like, but the 2 before that I found to be like the most powerful scenes. And then the one where they're singing the song Idol. It was so powerful.
Right,
because I don't know, it was
I feel
something about the way they had everyone go like zombie-eyed and like march, I felt like was pointing to a lot of the things we had been talking about, about like, you know, so many, you know, so it's people will point the finger at like social media, but like different things can just make
it's such a strong characterization of what's actually and seeing how enticing and the pull of certain things are. And as a social contagion, like this is like corrupting people's minds, right? And in a way that's so strong. And it was interesting because we were watching, like we were like reading reviews and seeing what people are thinking, and it's all like, oh, the music, the animation's so great, and we're like, there's literally like this scene of everybody going zombie towards, and it's like
your idol, like people these days have
and I thought it was really interesting also because they're using a lot of like religious language in terms of like the demons, and then also like saying
only one who love your sins. Amazing singing voices.
I'm the only one who love your sins.
And well, that one in particular, I kept mentioning to you, I was like, that's crazy that they literally put in like, I'm the only one who will love you for your sin. And I think what we were thinking about as to what the demon really is when you start to lie to yourself, when you start to, it's okay to do bad things because everybody does bad things sometimes, right? Everybody makes mistakes, but to hide that from yourself, to hide that from other people.
Facing that is the hard part.
To hide that from other people, to hide that from yourself starts to create an illusion that you have to work to maintain, right? You have to work to maintain this other sense of yourself where you know you did something bad, but then or you know that you're thinking this sort of thing, or you know you had some emotion, even if it's as simple as like, oh, I get, you know, embarrassed in social situations, and so I'm just going to act like I don't care. Right. That's a form of just lying to yourself, lying to the people around you, and you don't want to. If you don't admit that, then what it does is it creates this false perception of yourself that you have to work to maintain, and as it goes on for longer and longer, starts to take up more and more of your energy and your perception, just trying to not, you know, face that, and to just go through life with this false perception of yourself that you know is false, but you're trying so hard to believe that it's not. You're acting as if it's not.
Well, that's the demon, is when it's like, it's a lie. It's something that you can't bear to face. It's just like eating you up.
And that's the same thing that what happened with Jinu is he was like talking about it, but he still didn't give her the full truth. And that also shows that he was like trying to, like, you know, that he still was lying about his history, and because he thought that it would make him unforgivable. But what that did was it created this false perception, and it drove him to do even worse things. Right. And then it's like, okay, well, so it's not actually helping to hide from those things. And it's the same thing for her,
for Rumi.
Because she was half demon and she was hiding from that. She wouldn't even tell her friend. She wouldn't tell anybody. Then it started to take over even more, right? And then the patterns were spreading, and then it got to her voice and all of that. And then once she started being able to talk about it with somebody, then it started getting better, right? So I think it's such a clear parallel to what that actually is, because as long as you can identify the problem, then you can move forward and you can get better. But if you don't, it's just going to start taking over.
That's part of the reason. That's why I think that's why I said like those two scenes were so important. And the one where it was the I love you, Sid. Zombie hunt.
Only one who love you for your sins.
And then like the demon guy singing. And then also the one before that where she goes to her foster parent and who, you know, used to be the last
Celine lady.
So the Celine lady who, you know, used to be part of the last band of Kpop Demon Hunters. Mm-hmm. And she's like, you know, it's done. Like, they know. And she wants Celine to see her for who she is, because she's trying to embrace the thing that not only, I think it seems like not only was eating her up, but also Celine. Yeah. Because she was like, no, she was still in denial.
Yeah. And she was like, oh no, we can just cover him up again. And it's like.
And I think the showing like how she was like trying to cover up her arms, where she was like, literally her face is like glowing with these pattern thingies. It just shows how far
the denial
is. And I think that's so powerful because, like, I resonated with that. I think everyone's experienced that denial, that, you know,
because you think that when you face the truth to yourself, or when you face the truth to other people,
it feels like the world's just gonna end.
Yeah, that you think, oh, and then everything's gonna end. But then what you don't realize is that it doesn't, right? And that then you wake up the next morning and you're like, hey, I'm still here. Yeah. Right. And that's what facing the demon really is. And that's part of where our understanding, I think, might deviate a little bit from the story, is that it's like slaying demons. I think that a lot of what it is really just facing it. And I think that here's something that is crazy. We were using the terminology of demon before we watched the movie to describe this problem, because we were noticing that either it was like in ourselves, in terms of like, you know, what we had experienced in the past, or with people that we, you know, knew, and that, you know, and loved ones, where we were like noticing a sort of pattern that if you do have a lie that you keep telling yourself, that it starts to continue. Just the older you get, the longer it lasts, the more it consumes you. Yeah. And I think that that's something that is a very important concept to know, where these sorts of things will come from, because then you start to believe that, oh, well, because you're showing with your actions that you believe that facing this and telling somebody else about this it's like is the worst thing, because you do everything you can to avoid it. So your actions are reinforcing that belief every single time it happens, and it just goes stronger and stronger and stronger.
Yeah, and I think something that the reason why I think this movie is so powerful, like, there are parts of it that are cringy and petty and like kind of like, really, you know, really, like, they're, you know, when something that is really annoying to me about some movies and stuff is that they'll have like a character walking alone. And then they'll be like talking to themselves. Like, with one scene, like, Gino's like, she's a hunter, but she's a demon. It's like, oh my god. It's like, that's unrealistic.
Right.
No one does that.
Yeah.
I think
maybe people do.
Maybe everyone does that, and I'm the weird one. But anyway, my point is, even though parts of the movie, like, I was kind of like, really,
although, like, that's part of what I was really interesting about our viewing experience, was the first time we watched it, we were like, ooh, cringe, ooh, cringe. And then the second time we watched it, I was like, whoa. Right? I was like, wow, because
it plants the seed.
Yeah, it does.
Like, it's introducing, so many people are watching this movie. Yeah. And, you know, it's resonating. Yeah. And I think it's introducing a lot of, especially young people, to this concept of don't, you know, face your demons, you know?
And going back to the Idol song and that whole, like, scene, it was basically showing how so much of what we elevate in our culture today is these sorts of lies, like, oh, if you just, like, have a bunch of money, spend a bunch of on expensive stuff, then you'll be happy, and like all that sort of things, and just like reinforcing like I'm the only one who'll love you for your sins, because one, I don't have a personal relationship with you, there's no accountability, so people are looking at these people that are doing these sorts of behaviors that are like, you know, these are not good behaviors at all. Like you think about the lyrics of most pop songs these days, it's like, what is going on? It's like a hypersexualization, and just like talking about
see these rappers with their gold chains, like with the ladies and like super expensive cars, and that's most music videos are just like,
and just like showing off skin, when it's just like, even when you're, you know, your audience is like, you know, preteens.
I mean,
and
you
it's
see
just
the like 7 deadly sins from Christianity. You're portraying most of them in a lot of these music videos. And so it's kind of like, you know, that's what it's talking about.
Yeah.
And I think one thing that's cool is, you know, the Soda Pop song.
Right.
That's the song they used
to
the
basically
demon dudes they used to get all these people to like, you know, to steal their souls.
Yeah, that was the part that we're like, yeah, so many of these people will like, it's like
catchy.
Oh, this seems so harmless, seems just like, you know, but it's I mean, that's such a good parallel to a lot of what today people be like, oh, it's a good song, I love the song, and then it's like, what are the lyrics that you're listening to over and over again while you're listening to that song?
Yeah,
right. And so you kind of have this allure, this like this surface level, oh, this is not anything bad, and then all of a sudden you start to normalize and think that those things are okay. And that's so much of what we see in today's culture. You see like, you know, young girls walking around with like extremely revealing clothing now, and that's just because they're seeing that all the time, and so then they just think that that's normal, and it's like, no, it's not.
I think the idol is the narratives you tell yourself to like,
the idol is like the public justification of those lies, right? Because then you think, oh, well, then you have everybody who's following those people, then that's your community that'll validate those things that you think, and it's just something that starts to make everything normalized, and then all of a sudden to be like, hey, you know, to point those things out, you know, people are like, what are you talking about? This is totally normal, right? And then all of a sudden you don't even have that mechanism to bring those things up and to share concerns, right? And so I think that also going back to like the like more religious and spiritual language, I think that was something that it's like, to have that in such a like mainstream popular movie is very interesting. That's kind of like what they're talking about, like, okay, loving you for your sins, and this is what's actually happening. And that's because I think, you know, that's kind of where these sorts of concepts first originated, when humans were trying to think about what is good and what is bad. And I think that our culture has become so like, oh, you can think this is good and I can think that's bad, but we can just coexist together and not actually talk about it. And I think that part of what we're confronting is that, no, we need to talk about it. We need to actually think about like, hey, there is a real good and there is a real bad, right? And if we can't contend with that, then all of a sudden we're just going to be split off into different groups of lies. And that's basically what is happening. That's basically what that concept of demon is.
Yeah, it's you're believing something that isn't true, and you're trying to protect yourself from the things that are telling you, hey, this isn't true. And you're going to end up like, you're going to isolate yourself from like certain parts of reality, including other people that don't believe the same things you do. And that can be, you know, on a small scale, like personal things, but that can also be on a large scale, like lots of things we're seeing on social media right now, and just politics and religion and all sorts of stuff.
And I think that part of it is also like, if you keep just like saying to yourself with your actions, hiding from this is the most important thing to me, then it starts to become the most important thing to you. And then basically all you really have guiding you as a human is like hiding from certain things and clinging to, you know, a version of yourself that you really aren't. You know, that's part of what I think we've really appreciated about, you know, learning from some of these religions, and what it allowed humans to do is like, you know, if you go to people talk about how humans are fallen creatures. You're not perfect. Only God is perfect, right? And I think that that's a really important message, regardless of if you're religious or, you know, secular, is to believe that you're, you know, that you're perfect and to hide from your imperfections instead of thinking, no, to be human is to be imperfect. To be human is to mess up, to have difficulty doing the things that I want to do, that I know I should do.
Yeah.
We can't even do those things.
Yeah.
That's how broken we are. That's how imperfect we are, right? And to know that, and that's a lot of what these demons come from, is we want to think that we're perfect. We want to think that we're good.
We have these narratives around ourselves that's like, you know, I'm a good person, I am kind, I am dutiful, I am smart, I am all of these different things. And obviously you're going to make mistakes. There are going to be things that are going to be contradicting those beliefs.
Yeah.
And then also one thing, even just like a little lie can be so damaging. It can be so, not only just like, oh, you're lying to yourself, you're twisting your paradigm, but also it's just like taking up so much of your mental energy.
Yeah.
Like people who make like huge mistakes and then they're trying to cover it up. I can't even like imagine, because like I'll watch too many YouTube videos in a day and I don't want anyone to know.
Yeah.
I don't want anyone looking through my history and like looking,
like, geez,
you know, and then
what's your cooking video watch rate to actual cooking ratio?
Like some days I'll watch so many cooking videos
And then be
but
like,
I
I'm too tired
to cook. And
Yeah.
then and like it, you know, you need to share those things, and you don't want to keep those things hidden, because I know how like much, if I was like trying to hide that from Sume, and I was
Right.
trying to be like, no, Sume can't know, that
Yeah.
would just eat me up. And I
Yeah.
can, something as trivial as that
Yeah.
can be so damaging to your relationships, can be so damaging to your mental health.
Yeah, because then you start to think that you're something that you're not, and that's something that I think is really damaging. But like the way that we talk about it, it's like, oh, you're your perfect, like beautiful self, and it's like, no,
You're a beautiful butterfly.
I think it's really important to understand that, no, first and foremost, we are flawed, we are broken, we do horrible things when we don't mean to, and sometimes we mean to, because we're just, you know, we're human beings.
You're going to
you know?
feel extremely alienated if you don't accept that.
Yeah.
And, you know, this doesn't justify mistakes you make, but you still got to accept them, and you got to move on, because, you know, believing that they're not true and trying to cover it up is not going to make it less true.
And I think that's ultimately what the demon is when you become so all-consumed with a lie, that's the primary driver for your decisions, and that becomes all that you really are when it comes down to it, when it comes down to motive, when it comes down to, are you able to prioritize anything else other than, you know, hiding from something, right? Because if you just keep going in through that cycle of, I need to hide this, that becomes the most important thing to you, even and you're not even aware of it, of course, because you're trying actively not to be aware of it.
Yeah.
And I think that's then how are you supposed to live life like that, right? How are you supposed to feel alive? How are you supposed to feel connected to people when you can't be honest with yourself about who you are? You're not going to be honest with anybody else, and then nobody knows you. Then all of a sudden you're completely isolated and alone, and you made it that way, right? And I think that's something that, if we keep telling people like, hey, no, you're just a good person, you're beautiful, you're perfect, then they're going to think that they have to think that way, and then they're going to do anything to think that way, including lying to themselves. And I think that's the worst thing that we could be doing, you know, because we need to be able to accept ourselves in our brokenness, in our flaws, and that's what it really means to open our eyes to who we are. That's what it means to be authentic.
That's
right?
what it means to say to yourself, Isla, you watch those cooking videos and you can't undo that.
You can't get that time back, but that's okay, because we're just humans. And even within that, we can do good things.